When you look back at the progress you've made in life so far, it's not often that you can point to one single thing that made all the difference. There are exceptions to this. Some people experience radically transformative events that change their life and their outlook. Others can point to a single habit like going to the gym that completely changed the game for them. But most of us, when we look back, it wasn't a single thing, a single habit, a single event that got us to where we are now. It was a collection of multiple habits, of consistent improvements and decisions that we made. But you already know this. It is basic self-help stuff. It's atomic habits. It's the compound effect. It's slight edge. The problem is, if you're anything like me, you still fall into this trap of what I call single solution thinking. Single solution thinking is when you come across something that seems novel to you. It might be a new habit, a new way of working. It might be a new note-taking app. And as soon as you learn about this thing, you start convincing yourself that it's going to change everything for you. For example, when I first came across the bullet journaling methodology, I read the guy's book and I bought a bunch of notebooks, like physical ones. I deluded myself into thinking that this would change everything for me. The logic behind it was sound, it made sense to me, I got really excited. But after a few days of following this new bullet journaling methodology, I found out, to no surprise, that I still dealt with the same problems. I still had a tendency to procrastinate. I still dealt with everyday normal problems and bad habits that I was trying to fix. Only now I was $30 worse off because I had bought a fancy notebook and pen. Now it's the same feeling I get when I upgrade my laptop. I remember buying a new one not too long ago, and I remember thinking to myself, this is it, new laptop, fresh start, this will be the thing that changes everything. Of course, it didn't, right? It's just a tool. It's just the same as the last one, but a little bit faster. It's not the single solution that I deluded myself into thinking it was. Now, I can point to dozens of other times that I've fallen for this single solution trap or fallacy, whatever you want to call it. I remember in the world of fitness and nutrition, I used to think that intermittent fasting would change the game completely for me and be the solution, or that if I just took magnesium and vitamin D every day, it would fix all my issues and I'd have relentless energy. Of course, it's not the case. It's these things combined with a bunch of other stuff that produce these improvements. Likewise, in the world of business, I thought that a new project management tool or CRM would completely fix all these like fundamental issues and double our sales and so on and so on. Now, it's not that I actually believed this was the case, right? Like if I'd taken a step back and thought about it, I'd realize that obviously these things weren't going to completely change the game because they're just singular habits or singular things and they're part of a bigger system that needs to be in place. But when you're in the moment and when you fall into this trap, it's hard to do that. It is hard to take a step back. You get caught up in the excitement, you get caught up in the motivational feelings, and your rationality just goes out the window. But does it matter? I mean, does it matter that we do this? Is it actually a problem, this single solution thinking? Like we get over it eventually. It seems pretty harmless, but I don't think it is. I think this way of thinking and this way of operating leads to shiny object syndrome, and it leads to compulsive habit switching. You come across what you think is going to be a game-changing solution, and when it doesn't work as you expected, you end up finding another all-in-one solution and you switch to that, only to repeat this process, to repeat this cycle. And to me, that is a problem because you forego any benefits that come from consistently sticking to a habit or to multiple habits. You rely heavily on motivational highs that disappear when reality sets back in and you realize that the solution that you thought was going to be a game changer really isn't that powerful. And at the end of it all, you don't become any more effective. So there's a better way to operate and there's a better way to think. And I want to get to that in just a moment. But before we do, there is one caveat to this, which is that there are basically some things that are single solutions, or at least extremely close to it. And I might sound like I'm contradicting myself here, but I'm not. See, most of the time when we fall into the single solution trap or that way of thinking, it's something that's relatively easy. Like the new note-taking system or productivity tracker that you think is going to change the game for you, it's not hard to download and start using. It's not hard to play around with. The new laptop you just bought and gives you that feeling of like fresh start. It's going to change the game. finally going to be successful. It's not that hard to go to the store and buy a laptop or go on the internet and purchase it, right? Like it doesn't involve that much effort. But then there are other habits and things that are as close to single solutions as you can get. For example, if I told you that the secret to success was just to work intensely and with extreme focus and consistency on your craft for 3 to 4 hours a day, does that excite you? Does that get you into that single solution like frame of thinking? It might, but it probably doesn't lead you to that same motivational high as some of these other easier things do, because it's hard and you know it and it feels too simple. So that's the caveat. There are some habits like deep work that are as close to single solutions as you get, and you should implement them, but they usually aren't as attractive as these fake single solutions that I talked about earlier. So instead of falling into this single solution way of operating, a better approach, which I'm going to recommend, is to act with continuous improvement. So let's change your operating system, and we need to start with observation. You want to develop awareness. Next time you find yourself falling into this single solution way of thinking, this trap, observe yourself. Ask, what's drawing me towards this thing? Why am I so attracted to it? Why do I think that it's going to change the game for me when really I know that it's not? I find that usually when I fall into this trap, the following is true. I'm stuck in a rut because I've abandoned habits that I know are good for me and actually do affect change. I'm tired. I'm experiencing intermittent boredom with the project I'm working on, and I want to find something to get that motivational high back up. Maybe I'm anxious about the goals that I've set, mostly because I'm focusing too much on the goals instead of the process. And it's one or more of these things combined that makes me far more susceptible to that single solution mentality. The next tip here to change your operating system is to extend your time horizon. So recently I was reading an article on athletic development, in particular the importance of building certain base fitness adaptations. And what shocked me was how long it takes for some of these adaptations to occur. There was like a study of cyclists, and it kind of showed like muscular endurance development over time. And it was like 8 to 10 years. There's certain adaptations that take years and years to develop, and there's no shortcuts. You just can't speed up the process. Productivity and mental work is different, obviously, but while I'm not a scientist and honestly have no clue what I'm talking about when it comes to this, I'm pretty sure that things like the ability to sit down and focus on challenging work, avoiding distraction, changing your procrastination habits, these things do take time. They are adaptations, and they probably take more time than you think. So if you're coming at life with a short time horizon, then you're only going to be disappointed. If you're only looking ahead a few days or weeks, and you want everything to change and improve in that time period, then you'll be disappointed and you'll probably give up and you'll fall back into this single solution, shortcut, magic pill way of thinking. But when you focus on a long time horizon, months, years, you understand that these changes, these habits, these adaptations are not going to occur overnight. You don't expect them to, and so you're not surprised when they don't. And also, when you have a long time horizon, the speed of change and the speed of your results will likely come sooner than you expect. Now, one tactic that goes hand in hand with extending your time horizon is to focus on improvement from your baseline. So I'm not an anti-goal guy. I think there is value to setting goals, but I do think there is a lot of truth to focusing on process rather than goals, particularly building a cycle of positive reinforcement instead of operating from a place of lack. If you're focused on a goal to write for 3 hours every day and you're currently at 0 hours, 0 minutes, like you're just not doing it, then A, it's going to be really hard for you to just start writing 3 hours a day and stick to it. And B, every day you don't hit that number, there's a good chance that you'll feel like a complete failure. And this, for a lot of people, creates a negative cycle that leads to abandonment and just quitting altogether and ending back up at square one. A better approach, in my opinion, is to focus on improvement from your baseline. So if you're currently at 0 hours, 0 minutes of writing per day, then your baseline is 0. It's nothing. So even if you get 5 minutes of writing done the next day, like that's an improvement on your baseline. And then after some days or weeks, you've established a new baseline. Maybe you're doing 30 minutes every day pretty consistently. And so you improve on that by taking it to 45 minutes and so on and so on and so on. When you do this, you get the feeling of satisfaction and reward from the small improvements you're making. you feel like you're winning every day. Every day you improve on your baseline. You build massive momentum, and it's not like you're looking at this thing out in the distance that seems so lofty and hard to achieve. You're just focusing on the day-to-day improvement from your baseline. The next tip is to focus on foundations first and then optimize. So one mistake that people make when they follow the continuous improvement way of operating that I'm talking about is they over-optimize before building a strong foundation. Let's go back to athletic development for a moment. If someone has a goal of running a marathon and they haven't run in 2 decades, then they probably shouldn't start with optimizations. Like, they shouldn't start by optimizing the specifics of a training plan. They shouldn't create this complex plan with 12 different types of running exercises, or like spend weeks looking for the best type of shoe to run in. They should just start by running slowly and building a base, especially as they are starting from zero. I think knowledge workers should follow a similar approach. If you are a chronic procrastinator, you're hardly getting any work done, then you shouldn't start by optimizing. You should start by increasing your capacity for focus and getting work done, because you can't optimize nothing. And optimizing something small only leads to marginal gains. If you can only get an hour of work done per day, then optimizing that, maybe it saves you 10 minutes. So now you're getting like an hour 10 worth of work done in an hour. Like it's just not that useful. There are more gains to be made by increasing volume and increasing output. So if you want to be a writer, then you should build up your capacity to just write for hours each day before you start optimizing those hours. If you want to be an entrepreneur, then you should put volume towards developing the skills you need to grow, build the business that you want to build, instead of just trying to optimize it all. And once you get to a point where you are hitting diminishing returns, or you can't really put more time in, then it's time to optimize. Now, of course, there are some caveats here. There are exceptions. There are some optimizations that are obvious and easy to implement, and you might as well do them. But generally speaking, most people over-optimize and would be better off just adding volume, like just doing more work. And that's who I'm speaking to in this video. The final tip is to measure it. So as Peter Drucker says, what gets measured gets managed. You want to measure your progress, especially if you're trying to improve on your baseline. It doesn't really matter how you measure it. I would just keep it simple, but it is important that you do measure it for a couple of reasons. Number one is that it forces you to be honest with yourself. The numbers and the data are there. And if you're not measuring anything, then you can bend the truth and you can lie to yourself about how you're improving, even though, you may not be. And if you had the numbers down, then it would show otherwise. The second reason is that it gives you confidence and momentum. On your worst days, it is great to be able to look at a spreadsheet or a document that shows over the past weeks and months how much progress you've made and how you've improved from that starting point. And third, it gives you insights. So maybe you're trying to increase your deep work, your focus hours, and you notice that on Fridays, there's always a dip. You always seem to slack off and get less done. Maybe you can make a change to improve that. Maybe you decide to take Fridays off and just work more on Monday to Thursday. So the data that you track can lead towards new improvements. So it's really important that you measure your progress and measure what you're doing. So to wrap up, we looked at single solution thinking or magic pill thinking and the major problems with it. We then looked at the continuous improvement way of operating and 5 principles to avoid getting stuck in this single solution trap. Those principles were observation and awareness. Know what it feels like when you're falling into the single solution, the magic pill trap. Extend your time horizon. Improvements take time. Keep that in mind. Focus on improvement from baseline. Increase volume and then optimize. Build those foundations first. Don't optimize prematurely. And then the 5th and final principle was to measure your progress. Measure what you're doing. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.